I've learned a lot from the Avocademy Foundations Bootcamp, and now that I'm in the Career Jumpstart program, I'm gaining a lot of experience doing real-life client projects that I'm able to add to my portfolio. But there's one thing that I'm realizing when doing this UX bootcamp, and it has me very worried. And this isn't just with Avocademy, but UX bootcamps in general. UX bootcamps as a business model are designed to be one-to-many programs, meaning that the same program can be used by one person or 1,000 people, and the experience doesn't really change that much. Now, the main drawback with having a one-to-many program like this is that it's not a customizable experience. So what I mean by that is everyone learns about the UX foundations in the exact same way. Everyone does their projects in the same way, and everyone builds out their portfolio the same way. And that final aspect is what has me worried when I go to search for a job. One thing I've learned about the UX industry is that typically a recruiter will look at someone's portfolio as one of the first things that they look at. Well, what happens when a lot of these portfolios look very similar, minus some typography and color palette differentiations? As of now, there are over 2,000 people in the Avocademy Foundations Bootcamp, and there are over 500 people in the Avocademy Career Jumpstart program. So what happens when a recruiter is looking at these portfolios and they all look strikingly similar to one another? The way Avocademy teaches to build out a portfolio is using a program called UXfolio, which is a very easy to use portfolio website maker. It's kind of like similar to Squarespace. And while it's easy to use, it again is a very template heavy program. So if many people design their portfolios using UXfolio, they're all going to look kind of similar. Even if they're using different templates, you can tell that the skeleton is definitely the same throughout. The other thing that Avocademy and other UX bootcamps do, which is very helpful for me, but also contributes to the sea of very similar looking portfolios, is not only do they recommend using UXfolio, but they also give you templates on what to actually put into that portfolio. So now, if we're taking the Avocademy example, there are now over 2,000 people that are going to have not only just very similar looking portfolios, but now a lot of the content that is going to go into that portfolio is going to be similar as well. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, the content of what projects people have been working on is going to be different between different portfolios. But just run this scenario with me real quick. So imagine you have a recruiter looking at two different portfolios. You have Megan's over here and you have Stacy's over here. And they've both used UXfolio, and they've both have gone through the same bootcamp. So they have a lot of the same templates that is recommended that they use when it comes to talking about themselves. And let's be real, how many different ways are there to say that, you know, you're a passionate UX designer wanting to create intuitive and beautiful experiences for all users? It's very hard to really expand upon that in any sort of meaningful way. So now Megan and Stacy have these portfolios that look very similar, and really the only thing that differentiates the two is their specific case studies. But when you dig deeper there, their case studies are presented similarly. So really, the only difference between Megan's and Stacy's portfolio is just the fact that each one has their individual name on it, and the clients that they worked with are going to be different. But the way that everything laid out is pretty much the same. So at that point, how is a recruiter supposed to pick the best option at that point? And we're just talking about two people here. So what happens when there's 500 people and that same scenario happens where you have all these similar looking portfolios, the case studies are all done similarly? How is a recruiter supposed to be able to select which candidate moves on to the next round? And so since I've been thinking about this lately, I've been thinking about ways that I can differentiate myself despite the fact that I'm using UXfolio. And I think the way that I can differentiate myself and the way that I think that you might be able to differentiate yourself if you're looking to get into the UX industry is to really double down on what makes you unique. What is your personality and what is your background? And I think really letting that shine through is going to make an impact when it comes to a recruiter wanting to take you on to the next stage or not. Now, obviously your case studies have to be good and you have to have the requisite skills to do UX design. But I think beyond that, just doubling down on the personality and background, the personal background is just something that can't be faked. And if you can really let that shine through in your portfolio, I think that is a great way to differentiate yourself from a sea of other people that happen to be using the same portfolio website template. And there's a lot of different ways to inject personality into a portfolio. It's a little harder when you're using something like UXfolio because you're bound by the features that UXfolio has. But for example, in my hero section of my portfolio, the background is an image of Richmond, which is where I live. I live in Richmond, Virginia. And so I thought just by having that in there, it at least just gives a little bit of a picture on where I'm at. The other thing that I do is I put right in the top that I'm a physical therapist. I double down on that. I think a lot of people shy away from their past experiences, and I think that a lot of skills can be transferred into the UX industry. And so I say that I'm a physical therapist, and in my hero blurb, I talk about how my past experience is with physical therapy, help with UX design for reasons XYZ. And I just lay that out just so that people know that, hey, this is where I came from and this is my background. Another obvious thing that you can do is fill out an about me section. So just talk about who you are as a person. I added a little more depth about how the physical therapy field helps me with UX design, but I also just talked about what my hobbies were. At the end of the day, I feel like I don't have any evidence for this, but I feel like a recruiter wants to know that there is a human behind this portfolio and it's not something that could just be generated with AI. And the other thing that I feel like could be potentially helpful, but I have no evidence to back this up yet, is having some sort of medium to document your progress with becoming a UX designer. And so for me, this YouTube channel serves as that. And so I make damn sure that my YouTube link is listed prominently on my portfolio. Now, I wish they had a TikTok link or social media icon that I could put, but for some reason, UXfolio doesn't have that, which is just ridiculous. But that would be another thing that I would want to put up there if I could. But for you, if you're wanting to get into the UX industry, I think a really nice thing to do that could really help is to document your journey. I know I've seen a lot of people do that on YouTube, but it doesn't have to be YouTube. If you're not someone that wants to talk on camera, maybe writing is more your style, and you can write articles on Medium just talking about your journey with it. You know, what are you struggling with? Why do you want to go into this industry? And just sort of talk about your journey week by week as you're making this transition from whatever career you have now to the UX industry. Or maybe you like audio, so you can start a podcast and you can talk about your journey that way, and you can just talk in front of a microphone. It's definitely more casual than doing a YouTube video, and you can chat about what your experience has been like with becoming a UX designer. Maybe you can even interview people in the UX design field, and that way you can learn about them and also be able to share that knowledge with the rest of the world through a podcast. And so those are a few ways that you can get started with documenting your journey with becoming a UX designer. And so, like I said, while I don't have concrete proof that this is something that is actually going to help with landing a job, I just can't imagine a scenario where it would not be at least somewhat helpful. You know, if anything, it'll at least help let your personality shine through. It is very hard to do that in a portfolio, but if you have a blog, a YouTube channel, or a podcast, your personality is going to be able to shine through so much better that way. And so as far as the Avocademy Career Jumpstart program goes, I'm about halfway through my second client project. And so I'm getting very close to where I actually have to start the job hunting progress. And so I'll be very interested to see how recruiters respond to my portfolio. And I'll certainly be sure to keep you updated as I go forward. But I do have a favor to ask. If you are getting value from these videos, could you just tap the subscribe button and notification bell? And if you're interested about the Avocademy Career Jumpstart program, I have a video where I talk about that in this video here. So be sure to check that out. And until next time, I will see you in the next video. Take care.